A warm wedding night, Ethan Cole, a 32-year-old single father, stands on the sidelines, observing the crowd. He's accustomed to a monotonous life, responsibilities, and raising his child alone. But that night changes when he sees Olivia Grant, a 30-year-old billionaire, sitting aloof, injured, and heartbroken after a horrific accident. An impulsive dance changes everything. Follow my story to the end. Like and comment the city you're viewing to let me know how far this story has come. The string lights hanging over the Mitchells' backyard swayed gently in the late September breeze, casting uneven shadows across the faces of wedding guests who'd gathered to celebrate Jenny and Marcus. Ethan Cole stood near the dessert table, a paper plate in one hand, watching his daughter Mia chase fireflies with 3 other kids near the property line. She was 7 now, all elbows and knees and wild brown curls that refused to stay in the braid he'd attempted that morning. "You gonna actually eat that cake or just hold it hostage?" Ethan turned to find Marcus's cousin, Steve, grinning at him with a beer in hand. "Just making sure Mia doesn't see me with it," Ethan said. "She's already had 2 pieces. If she knows there's a third in play, I'll never hear the end of it." Steve laughed. "Smart man. How long you been flying solo with her now?" 4 years. The answer came automatically, without the sharp edge it used to carry. "Since she was 3. That's rough, brother. Her mom ever come around?" Ethan shook his head. "She signed away her rights when Mia was 18 months old. Haven't heard from her since." Steve grimaced. "Sorry, man. I shouldn't have—" "It's fine," Ethan cut in, keeping his voice light. "We manage. Mia's happy. That's what matters." It was the truth, mostly. They did manage. His job as a mechanic at Patterson's auto shop paid the bills, kept food on the table, covered the mortgage on the small 2-bedroom house his grandmother had left him. Mia had friends, did well in school, never went without the things she needed. But managing wasn't the same as thriving, and Ethan knew it. His life had become a series of routines. Wake up, make breakfast, drop Mia at school, work, pick her up, dinner, homework, bedtime, repeat. Weekends were for grocery shopping, laundry, yard work, and the occasional birthday party like this one. He didn't date, didn't have time for it, and honestly, didn't have the energy. The few women who'd shown interest over the years had faded away quickly once they realized he wasn't looking for casual, and serious meant dealing with a kid who'd already been abandoned once. It was easier to just focus on Mia, keep his head down, stay in his lane. "Daddy!" Mia came sprinting across the lawn, her dress grass-stained at the hem. "Can I have some punch, please?" "You already had punch. That was like an hour ago." "It was 20 minutes ago." She gave him the look. Big brown eyes, bottom lip pushed out just slightly, the one that usually worked. "Fine," he sighed. "One more cup. Small." She squealed and darted toward the beverage table before he could change his mind. Steve chuckled. "You're soft." "Yeah, well." Ethan finally took a bite of the cake he'd been holding. "She's got me figured out." The band, a local group that played a mix of classic rock and country, launched into a slow song, and couples began drifting toward the makeshift dance floor the Mitchells had set up on the patio. Ethan watched them for a moment, feeling that familiar pang of something he couldn't quite name. Not loneliness, exactly. He'd made peace with being alone, but there was a hollowness to it sometimes, especially at events like this where everyone else seemed paired off, connected, part of something larger than themselves. That's when he saw her. She was sitting at one of the far tables, away from the clusters of guests, her posture rigid and her gaze fixed on nothing in particular. Even from a distance, Ethan could tell she didn't belong here, not in the sense that she was unwelcome, but in the way someone looks when they're occupying space without actually being present. She wore a dark blue dress that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage, her blonde hair pulled back in a way that seemed more functional than stylish. And there was something about the careful way she held herself, the slight stiffness in her shoulders, that made Ethan think of someone bracing for impact. "Who's that?" he asked Steve, nodding toward her. Steve followed his gaze and let out a low whistle. "That's Olivia Grant. You don't know who she is?" "Should I?" "She's a billionaire, man. Like actual billionaire. Made a fortune in tech investments or something before she was 30. She's friends with the bride, college roommates, I think." Ethan frowned. What's she doing sitting alone at a backyard wedding in Ohio? From what I heard, she was in some kind of accident a few months back. Car crash, maybe? Messed her up pretty bad. Hasn't been seen in public much since. Steve lowered his voice. Jenny said she almost didn't come tonight, said Olivia's been shutting everyone out. Ethan looked at her again. She hadn't moved, hadn't touched the drink in front of her, just sat there perfectly still like a statue someone had placed at the edge of the celebration. She looks miserable, Ethan said quietly. Probably is. I mean, being rich doesn't fix everything, right? Steve wandered off to refill his beer, leaving Ethan alone with his half-eaten cake and a strange, uncomfortable feeling in his chest. He didn't know Olivia Grant, had never heard of her before tonight, but something about the way she sat there, alone in a crowd, present but unreachable, struck a chord he didn't expect. Before he could talk himself out of it, he set down his plate and started walking toward her. The grass was uneven beneath his feet, still damp from the afternoon rain. He could hear Mia laughing somewhere behind him, the band transitioning into another slow song, the hum of conversation and clinking glasses. But all of it faded as he approached her table. She didn't look up when he stopped beside her. "Hi," he said. "Nothing." "I'm Ethan." He hesitated. "Would you like to dance?" That got her attention. Olivia's head turned slowly, her eyes, pale gray, sharp, locking onto his. For a long moment, she just stared at him, and Ethan felt the absurdity of what he'd just done land squarely on his shoulders. This woman was a billionaire. She'd probably been asked to dance by CEOs, celebrities, people who mattered. And here he was, a small-town mechanic with grease still under his fingernails, despite scrubbing them raw before the wedding. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, measured, with an edge that wasn't quite hostility but wasn't far off. Ethan blinked. "Why what?" "Why are you asking me to dance?" He hadn't expected that question. "Because you look like you'd rather be anywhere else, and I figured maybe a dance would help. Or make it worse. I'm honestly not sure." Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. "I don't dance," she said. "Neither do I. Not well, anyway. But they're playing a slow song, so we'd mostly just be swaying. Even I can manage that." Olivia's jaw tightened. "I'm not good company right now." "That's fine. I'm not trying to make conversation, just offering a dance." She looked away, her fingers tightening around the stem of her untouched wine glass. Ethan started to turn away, already regretting the impulse that had brought him over here, when she spoke again. "All right." He froze. "All right?" She stood, moving carefully, deliberately, and Ethan noticed the way she favored her left side, the slight hitch in her posture. Whatever had happened to her, it had left marks. "One dance," she said, "then you leave me alone." "Deal." They walked to the edge of the dance floor together, not touching, not speaking. The band was playing something slow and forgettable, the kind of song designed to fill space rather than be remembered. Ethan turned to face her, suddenly hyper-aware of how tall she was, only a few inches shorter than him, and how tightly she seemed to be holding herself together. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Her hand slid into his, cool and steady, and he rested his other hand lightly on her waist. She placed her free hand on his shoulder and they began to move. It wasn't graceful. Ethan had meant it when he said he couldn't dance, and Olivia moved like someone relearning how their body worked. But they found a rhythm, slow, cautious, enough to keep them upright and in time with the music. "You're not very good at this," Olivia said after a minute. "I warned you." "You did." A pause. "Why did you really ask me to dance?" Ethan considered lying, giving her some polite answer that would smooth over the awkwardness. But something about the way she was looking at him, like she was daring him to be dishonest, made him tell the truth. "Because you looked lonely," he said. "And I know what that feels like." Her hand tensed on his shoulder. "You don't know anything about me." "You're right. I don't." "Then don't pretend you do." "I'm not pretending. He exhaled slowly. "I just thought maybe you could use one thing tonight that wasn't awful, even if it's just a bad dance with a stranger." Olivia didn't respond to that. They kept moving, turning in slow circles while couples around them laughed and whispered to each other. Ethan could feel people watching them, could practically hear the whispers starting, the questions about who he was and why he was dancing with Olivia Grant, but he ignored it. "What do you do?" she asked suddenly. "I'm a mechanic. Fix cars, mostly. Sometimes trucks." Is that why your hands are so rough? Ethan glanced down at where their hands were joined. Yeah, soap only does so much. I wasn't complaining. He looked up, caught off guard by the comment, but her expression was unreadable. Do you have kids? She asked. A daughter, Mia. She's 7. Where's her mother? Gone. Has been for years. Olivia nodded slowly, like that made sense to her somehow. So you're doing it alone? Pretty much. That must be hard. It is, he admitted, but she's worth it. Something shifted in Olivia's face then, a softening, maybe, or just exhaustion breaking through the walls she'd built. You sound very certain. I am. The song was winding down, the final chord stretching out into silence. Ethan knew the dance was ending, that their deal had been for one song and nothing more. But he didn't want to let go yet. Didn't want to send her back to that lonely table where she'd been sitting like a ghost. Thank you, Olivia said quietly as the music stopped. For what? For not asking about the accident, or my money, or why I'm here. Ethan released her hand, stepping back. Those aren't my business. No, she agreed. They're not. She turned to walk away, and Ethan let her go. He'd kept his end of the deal, one dance, then leave her alone. But as he watched her make her way back to her table, he felt that strange pull again, that sense that walking away was the wrong choice, even though it was the only one that made sense. Daddy! Mia crashed into his side, nearly knocking him off balance. Who was that lady? She's really pretty. Just someone I danced with, kiddo. Are you going to dance with her again? I don't think so, Mia frowned. Why not? You looked happy. Hattie? Ethan hadn't even noticed. It was just one dance, Mia. That's dumb? If you like someone, you should dance with them more than once. It's not that simple. Why? Because she's a billionaire and I'm a mechanic. Because she clearly wants to be left alone. Because people like her don't end up with people like me, and pretending otherwise is just setting myself up to get hurt. But he couldn't say any of that to his 7-year-old daughter. Because sometimes one dance is enough, he said instead. Mia didn't look convinced, but she let it drop, dragging him toward the dessert table to show him the cookies she'd been eyeing. Ethan followed, glancing back once toward Olivia's table. She was gone. The wedding wound down around 10, and Ethan spent the last hour helping Jenny's parents haul chairs and tables into their garage while Mia fell asleep on a blanket under the string lights. He carried her to the truck when it was time to leave, buckling her into the back seat and draping his jacket over her shoulders. The drive home was quiet. Their neighborhood was on the east side of town, a cluster of modest houses with front porches and chain-link fences. Ethan pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment, listening to Mia's soft breathing from the back seat. He danced with Olivia Grant tonight. It still didn't feel real. He carried Mia inside, got her into bed without fully waking her, and then stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep. This was his life, this house, this kid, this routine. It was small and simple and predictable, and that was fine. That was good even. He didn't need anything else. But as he brushed his teeth and climbed into his own bed, he kept seeing Olivia's face, the careful way she moved, the sharp intelligence in her eyes, the exhaustion she tried so hard to hide. And he wondered if maybe, just for a moment, she'd felt a little less alone. He wondered if he had too. 3 days passed before he saw her again. It was Tuesday afternoon, and Ethan was elbow-deep in the engine of a Honda Civic when his boss, Dale Patterson, stuck his head into the garage. "Ethan, you got a visitor." Ethan straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "Who?" "Some lady. Says she needs to talk to you." Frowning, Ethan followed Dale out to the front office. And there, standing by the counter in dark jeans and a gray sweater, was Olivia Grant. She looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, though she was still tall and composed. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders, and she wasn't wearing any makeup that he could see. She looked tired. Human. "Hi," she said when she saw him. Ethan stared. "Hi." Dale glanced between them, clearly curious, but Ethan shot him a look and he retreated to his desk, pretending to focus on paperwork. "What are you doing here?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice low. "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "I've been asking myself that since I got in the car. How did you even find me?" I asked Jenny. She told me where you work. Ethan waited, but she didn't offer anything else. Just stood there, looking at him like she was waiting for him to make sense of this for her. Do you need your car fixed? He tried. No. Then I wanted to see you again. The words came out quickly, like she'd forced them before she could change her mind. I don't know why. That dance. It was the first time in months I didn't feel completely disconnected from everything. And I know that sounds insane, and I know I should have just left it alone, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About you. Ethan felt his heart kick against his ribs. Olivia, I'm not asking for anything, she interrupted. I just needed to know if it was real. If that moment was actually something, or if I imagined it, because I'm so desperate to feel anything that isn't pain. He should have told her it was nothing. Should have said it was just a dance, just a moment, nothing worth chasing. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing. Instead, he said, it was real. Her shoulders sagged slightly, like she'd been holding her breath. Okay. Okay. I needed to hear you say it. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. Can I buy you coffee, or is that too weird? It's definitely weird, Ethan said. But yeah, coffee sounds good. They went to the diner 2 blocks down. Rosie's, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since morning. Olivia looked absurdly out of place in her expensive clothes, but she didn't seem to notice or care. Tell me about your daughter, she said once they'd settled into a booth by the window. So he did. He told her about Mia's obsession with collecting rocks, about the time she'd convinced him to let her paint his toenails bright pink, about the way she narrated everything she did like she was the star of her own documentary. He talked until his coffee went cold, and Olivia listened with an intensity that made him feel like every word mattered. You love her a lot, Olivia said when he finally stopped. More than anything. She's lucky. I'm the lucky one. Olivia smiled, a small, fragile thing that didn't quite reach her eyes. I don't think I've ever heard someone say that about being a single parent before. Most people don't mean it when they do, but I do. She's... Ethan paused, searching for the right words. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, even on the hard days. What about you? Olivia asked. What do you want, outside of being her dad? The question caught him off guard. I don't think about that much. Why not? Because wanting things is how you end up disappointed. Olivia's expression shifted, something sharp and understanding passing across her face. I know that feeling. Yeah? Yeah. She traced the rim of her coffee cup with one finger. I spent my whole life wanting things. Success, recognition, control. I got all of it. And then I got in a car accident that nearly killed me, and I realized none of it mattered. None of it made me happy. It just made me busy. What happened? Ethan asked gently. In the accident? She was quiet for a long moment. Drunk driver. T-boned me at an intersection. I don't remember most of it, just waking up in the hospital with half my ribs broken and a concussion that left me confused for weeks. They said I was lucky to survive. But you don't feel lucky. No. Her voice was barely a whisper. I feel like I survived something I wasn't supposed to. And now I don't know what I'm supposed to do with the leftover pieces. Ethan reached across the table, covering her hand with his. She flinched slightly, but didn't pull away. You're supposed to keep going, he said, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Is that what you do? Every day? She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Whatever this is. Connection. Letting someone in. I've spent so long building walls that I don't know how to take them down. Then don't, Ethan said. Not all at once, just let me sit on your side of the wall for a while, see how it feels. Olivia laughed, a real laugh, startled and genuine. That's the worst metaphor I've ever heard. I'm a mechanic, not a poet. Clearly, but she didn't let go of his hand. They stayed at the diner until the dinner rush started, talking about everything and nothing. Olivia told him about growing up in New York, about the pressure to succeed that had followed her since childhood, about the emptiness of achieving everything you're supposed to want and still feeling hollow. Ethan told her about his grandmother, about inheriting the house and the responsibility of keeping Mia's life stable. about the loneliness that crept in during the quiet moments when Mia was asleep and the house was too still. It was easy, easier than it should have been. When they finally left, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan walked her to her car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than he'd make in 5 years. "Can I see you again?" Olivia asked. "Yes." "When?" "Whenever you want." She nodded, something fragile and hopeful crossing her face. "Okay, I'll call you." "I didn't give you my number." "Jenny did." Ethan laughed. "Of course she did." Olivia hesitated, then leaned in and kissed his cheek, quick, tentative, like she wasn't sure she was allowed. Then she got in her car and drove away, leaving Ethan standing in the parking lot with his heart hammering and his mind racing. He had no idea what he was doing, but for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. She called him 2 days later. They met for coffee again, then dinner the following week. Olivia came to the garage once to bring him lunch, and Ethan drove out to her estate on the outskirts of town, a sprawling property with manicured lawns and a house that looked like something out of a magazine, to help her fix a broken porch railing she'd been avoiding dealing with. It was slow, careful. They were both carrying too much weight to move quickly, but it was real. Mia noticed, of course. Kids always did. "Is Olivia your girlfriend?" she asked one Saturday morning while they were making pancakes. Ethan nearly dropped the spatula. "What? No, we're friends." "You smile a lot when you talk to her." "I smile at lots of things. Not like that." He looked down at his daughter, who was giving him the same knowing look she used when she caught him sneaking extra cookies before bed. "It's complicated, Mia." "Why?" "Because she's—" He stopped, unsure how to explain it. "She's different from us." "Because she's rich?" "Yeah," Mia shrugged. "So? You're still nice to her, and she's nice to you. That's what matters, right?" "Out of the mouths of babes." "Yeah, kiddo," Ethan said softly. "That's what matters." But even as he said it, he couldn't shake the nagging worry that it wouldn't be enough. 2 weeks turned into a month, and the coffee dates became something more deliberate. Ethan found himself checking his phone more often, waiting for Olivia's texts that came at odd hours, sometimes late at night when she couldn't sleep, sometimes early in the morning before he'd even gotten Mia out of bed. They were never long messages, never particularly profound. Just small observations about her day, questions about his, photos of things she found interesting. A bird on her windowsill, the sunrise over her property. A quote from a book she was reading. It was the kind of casual intimacy that shouldn't have meant much, but it did. On a Thursday afternoon in late October, Olivia showed up at the garage again, this time with takeout containers from the Italian place downtown. "You didn't have to do this," Ethan said, wiping his hands on his coveralls before taking the bag from her. "I know, I wanted to." She glanced around the shop. "Is there somewhere we can sit?" He led her to the break room, a cramped space with a folding table, 2 plastic chairs, and a coffee maker that had seen better days. It wasn't much, but Olivia settled into one of the chairs like it was perfectly normal for a billionaire to eat lunch in a mechanic's break room. "How was your morning?" she asked, opening one of the containers. "Fettuccine Alfredo," from the smell of it. "Replaced a transmission, rotated some tires, told Mrs. Henderson for the 3rd time that no, the check engine light doesn't just go away if you ignore it long enough." He took a bite of his pasta. "Yours?" "Conference call with investors. They're pushing me to get back into the office full time." "And you don't want to?" Olivia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I don't know what I want. That's the problem. Before the accident, I would have been back at my desk the second the doctors cleared me. But now?" She set the fork down. "Now I can't figure out why I cared so much in the first place." "Maybe because you thought you were supposed to." "Maybe." She looked at him. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you're just going through motions that were decided for you a long time ago?" Ethan thought about that, about the house he'd inherited, the job he'd fallen into because it was what his uncle did, the routine he'd built because it was safe and stable and what Mia needed. "Yeah, sometimes." "How do you deal with it?" "I remind myself that Mia's happy, that we have enough, that wanting more is just asking for trouble." Olivia leaned back in her chair, studying him. That's a very practical way to live. Practical keeps the lights on. It also sounds kind of lonely. He didn't have an answer for that, so he just kept eating. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sound of the garage filtering in through the thin walls. Dale arguing with a supplier on the phone, the pneumatic hiss of the lift, someone's radio playing classic rock. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia said eventually. "Sure." "Why me?" Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "You could have asked anyone to dance that night. There were plenty of single women at that wedding, probably several who would have been easier to talk to than I was. So why did you pick me?" He set down his fork, considering the question. The honest answer felt too vulnerable to say out loud, but Olivia was looking at him with those sharp gray eyes, and he knew she'd see through anything less than the truth. "Because you look the way I feel most of the time," he said quietly. "Like you were there, but not really there. Going through the motions, but not connecting to any of it. And I thought, I don't know. I thought maybe if I could give you one moment that felt real, it might remind me that real moments are still possible." Olivia didn't say anything for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was rough. "It worked." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She reached across the table, her hand finding his. "I haven't felt this present in months, maybe years. And it scares me." "Why?" "Because I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to be this version of myself, the one who eats lunch in break rooms and texts someone good morning and actually cares about the answer when I ask how their day was. I've spent so long being the other version that I don't know if this one's even real or if it's just some temporary thing that'll disappear the second life gets hard again." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I think you're more real now than you've ever been." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because real people are scared. Real people don't have all the answers. Real people sit in shitty break rooms and question everything." He smiled slightly. "Rich people in magazines with perfect lives? Those aren't real. They're just good at pretending." Olivia laughed, the sound watery. "I was very good at pretending." "I know. I don't want to pretend with you." "Then don't." She nodded, blinking hard, and Ethan pretended not to notice when she wiped at her eyes. They finished their lunch, talking about lighter things. Mia's upcoming school play, a book Olivia was reading, whether the Indian place on 5th Street was better than the one on Main. Normal things, easy things. When Olivia left, she kissed him. Not on the cheek this time, but on the mouth. Brief and tentative and sweet. Ethan's heart stuttered, his hands coming up to rest on her waist, and for a moment the entire world narrowed down to the warmth of her lips and the way she fit against him. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed. "I'll see you this weekend?" "Yeah," he managed. "This weekend." He watched her walk to her car, waited until she'd driven away, then went back into the garage in a daze. Dale took one look at him and grinned. "You got it bad, kid." Ethan couldn't even argue. The weekend came faster than he expected. Olivia had invited him and Mia to her estate for the afternoon. Something casual, she'd said, just spending time together. Ethan had been nervous about it, worried that Mia would feel out of place or that Olivia wouldn't know how to interact with a 7-year-old, but his concerns evaporated the moment they arrived. Olivia met them at the door in jeans and an old sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking nothing like the polished billionaire the world saw. And when Mia launched into an enthusiastic monologue about the science project she was working on, Olivia didn't just listen, she engaged, asked questions, offered suggestions that actually made sense. "So if you use baking soda and vinegar, the reaction creates carbon dioxide," Olivia was saying as they walked through her house. "But if you want a bigger reaction, you could try adding dish soap. It makes the foam more dramatic." Mia's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? I did a similar project when I was about your age. Nearly destroyed my mother's kitchen. Did you get in trouble?" "So much trouble. But it was worth it." Mia giggled, and Ethan felt something warm settle in his chest. This, Olivia talking to his daughter like she mattered, like her excitement about a science project was the most important thing in the world. This was something he hadn't realized he'd been missing. They spent the afternoon outside. Olivia's property had acres of land, most of it wooded, and she led them down a trail to a small pond surrounded by birch trees. Mia immediately started hunting for rocks to add to her collection, and Ethan found himself sitting on the grass next to Olivia, watching his daughter crouch by the water's edge. "She's wonderful," Olivia said softly. "She is. Gets it from her grandmother." "Not from you," Ethan shrugged. "I'm just trying not to screw her up too badly." "I think you're doing better than that." Olivia leaned against him, her shoulder touching his. "She's confident, happy, secure. That doesn't happen by accident. I worry I'm not enough, that she needs more than what I can give her." "Like what?" "I don't know. A mother, stability. The kind of childhood where she doesn't have to worry about whether we can afford new shoes or if I'm going to be too tired to help with homework." He picked at the grass. "I'm doing my best, but my best is still pretty limited." "Ethan." Olivia waited until he looked at her. "She has a father who loves her, who shows up every single day, who puts her first even when it's hard. That's not limited. That's everything." He wanted to believe her, wanted to accept that maybe he was doing okay, that Mia's happiness wasn't just luck or his grandmother's influence or some cosmic accident, but the doubt had been his companion for so long that letting it go felt dangerous. "What about you?" he asked, deflecting. "Do you want kids?" Olivia was quiet for a moment. "I used to think I did, but then my career took off, and there was always something more important, more urgent. And then the accident happened, and I realized I'd spent so much time building a life I didn't actually want to live that I'd forgotten to build the one I did. It's not too late. Isn't it? I'm 30, single, still figuring out how to function in my own body, not exactly prime parenting material. You're great with Mia. For an afternoon, that's different from the day-in, day-out reality of raising a child." "Yeah, it is," Ethan agreed. "It's harder, more exhausting, more terrifying. But it's also..." He watched Mia hold up a smooth gray stone, examining it in the sunlight. "It's also the only thing I've ever done that feels like it matters." Olivia didn't respond, but she took his hand, threading their fingers together. They sat like that for a while, watching Mia explore, listening to the wind move through the trees. When they finally headed back to the house, Mia was chattering nonstop about all the rocks she'd found, asking if they could come back next weekend to look for more. Olivia agreed immediately, and the smile on Mia's face was bright enough to rival the sun. Later, after they'd had dinner, pizza that Olivia ordered from a place in town, eaten at her kitchen island while Mia told increasingly elaborate stories about her classmates, Ethan helped clean up while Mia explored the living room, marveling at the grand piano in the corner. "Can you play?" Mia called out. Olivia glanced over. "A little. I took lessons when I was younger." "Will you play something?" "I'm pretty rusty." "Please?" Olivia looked at Ethan, who just shrugged. "You heard the kid." She sighed, but there was a smile tugging at her mouth as she walked over to the piano. Mia climbed onto the bench next to her, watching intently as Olivia's fingers found the keys. The melody that emerged was simple, a little hesitant, but lovely, something classical that Ethan didn't recognize. Mia was entranced, and Ethan found himself leaning against the kitchen counter, unable to look away. There was something about seeing Olivia like this, unguarded, sharing a piece of herself without hesitation, that made his chest ache in the best way. When the song ended, Mia clapped enthusiastically. "That was so pretty. Can you teach me?" "Maybe someday," Olivia said, and the careful hope in her voice made Ethan wonder if she was thinking about the same future he was starting to imagine. They left as the sun was setting, Mia falling asleep in the back seat before they'd even made it out of Olivia's driveway. Ethan glanced in the rear-view mirror, then back at the house disappearing behind them, and felt the weight of something shifting in his chest. This wasn't casual anymore. It hadn't been for a while. He was falling in love with Olivia Grant. The realization should have terrified him, should have sent him running back to the safety of his predictable life. But instead it just felt inevitable, like something that had been building since the moment he'd asked her to dance. That night, after he'd carried Mia inside and tucked her into bed, his phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Thank you for today. I can't remember the last time I felt this happy." He stared at the message for a long moment, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. There were 100 things he could say, 100 ways to play it safe. Instead, he typed, "Same here." Her response came almost immediately. "Can I see you tomorrow? Just us?" His heart kicked. "Yes." They met for breakfast at a cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place that served strong coffee and homemade pastries, and didn't ask questions when two people spent 3 hours talking in a corner booth. The conversation flowed easily, jumping from childhood memories to favorite movies to the strange intimacy of learning someone else's habits. "You do this thing," Olivia said, gesturing at him with her coffee cup. "When you're thinking hard about something, you rub the back of your neck, like you're trying to physically work out the problem." Ethan blinked. "I do?" "All the time. It's—" She paused, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "It's kind of endearing." "Endearing? That's a word I've never heard associated with me before." "Then people haven't been paying attention." The air between them shifted, charged with something unspoken. Ethan reached across the table, covering her hand with his, and Olivia's breath hitched. "I like you," he said. The words felt inadequate, too small for what was actually happening in his chest, but they were a start. "I like you too." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "More than I should, probably." "Why shouldn't you?" "Because this is complicated, because people are going to have opinions about us, because I'm still figuring out how to be a person again, and dragging you into that mess doesn't seem fair." "What if I want to be dragged into it?" Olivia's eyes searched his face. "Why would you want that?" "Because being with you doesn't feel like a mess. It feels like the first thing that's made sense in years." She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and then she was leaning across the table, kissing him like he was oxygen and she'd been drowning. Ethan kissed her back, his hand coming up to cup her cheek, and for a moment nothing else existed. Not the cafe, not the handful of other customers, not the impossible logistics of their situation. When they finally pulled apart, Olivia's eyes were bright. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I." "What if we mess it up?" "Then we mess it up," Ethan said. "But at least we'll have tried." She nodded, and he could see her making the decision in real time, choosing to take the risk, to believe that maybe this could work. "Okay," she said. "Okay." They left the cafe hand in hand, and Ethan felt like he was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying and wonderful. He didn't know where this was going, didn't know how to navigate the gap between their worlds or what would happen when people started asking questions. But for the first time in a long time, he wanted to find out. The following week brought a new rhythm. Olivia started spending more time in town, showing up at the garage during Ethan's lunch break or meeting him and Mia at the park after school. It was tentative at first. She was still learning how to fit into the small, ordinary moments that made up their lives. But she tried. And Mia, bless her, made it easy. "Olivia, look what I can do." Mia hung upside down from the monkey bars, her face turning red. "Very impressive," Olivia called back, though her expression was equal parts amused and concerned. She glanced at Ethan. "Is she supposed to be doing that?" "Probably not. But telling her to stop just makes her do it more. She's stubborn." "Wonder where she gets that from." Olivia elbowed him lightly, and Ethan grinned. This, the easy banter, the shared glances, the comfortable silence when Mia was occupied, felt more natural than anything he'd experienced in his previous attempts at dating. There was no performance, no trying to impress or be someone he wasn't. Olivia saw him as he was, tired mechanic, struggling single dad, guy who burned dinner more often than not, and she didn't seem to mind. "Daddy, can Olivia come to my play next week?" Mia asked that evening as Ethan was making spaghetti. She was sitting at the kitchen table, coloring a picture of what appeared to be a dragon. Ethan glanced at her. "I don't know, kiddo. Olivia might be busy. But I want her to come. I'm going to be a tree, and trees are really important." "They are," he agreed. "But we can't just assume—" His phone buzzed. He wiped his hands and checked it, finding a text from Olivia. "Mia invited me to her play. Is that okay with you?" He smiled. "More than okay. Fair warning, though, she's very excited about being a tree." The response was immediate. "I would be honored to watch her arboreal debut." Ethan showed Mia the text, and she squealed, abandoning her coloring to dance around the kitchen. "She said yes! She said yes! I can see that. This is going to be the best play ever." Ethan wasn't sure about that. The school's production of The Forest Friends was pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a second-grade play. But Mia's enthusiasm was infectious, and the thought of having Olivia there, sitting next to him in the audience, made something warm unfurl in his chest. The night of the play arrived with the typical chaos. Mia's costume, a brown dress with construction paper leaves stapled to it, had fallen apart twice before Ethan managed to get it secured. They were running late, and Mia was vibrating with nervous energy in the back seat. "What if I forget my line?" she asked for the 5th time. "You won't." "But what if I do?" "Then you make something up. The audience won't know the difference." "Yes, they will." Ethan met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Mia, you're going to be great. I promise." She didn't look convinced, but she stopped asking. They arrived at the school with 10 minutes to spare. The auditorium was packed with parents, grandparents, and younger siblings who'd clearly rather be anywhere else. Ethan spotted Olivia immediately. She was sitting near the middle, saving 2 seats, looking completely out of place in her tailored jacket and heels. "She came," Mia breathed. "Of course she did. Now go get in line with your class before your teacher sends a search party." Mia darted off, and Ethan made his way to Olivia. She smiled when she saw him, standing to give him a quick hug that he felt all the way down to his toes. "You made it," he said. "I told Mia I would. I keep my promises." They sat down, and Ethan was acutely aware of how close she was, how her perfume, something subtle and expensive, cut through the school smell of disinfectant and old paper. He wanted to reach for her hand, but wasn't sure if that was appropriate in a room full of parents he'd known for years. Olivia solved the problem by reaching for his first. The play was exactly as chaotic as Ethan had expected. Kids forgot their lines, someone's crown fell off mid-scene, and one of the rabbits started crying and had to be escorted off stage by a teacher. But Mia was perfect, or at least she delivered her one line, "The trees provide shelter for all," with such conviction that Ethan's chest swelled with pride. "She's a natural," Olivia whispered. "She definitely got her dramatic streak from somewhere. Wasn't me." Must have been her mother. Ethan tensed slightly at the mention, but Olivia's tone was light, curious rather than prying. "Yeah, Sarah was... She had a big personality, filled up every room she walked into." "Do you miss her?" It was a fair question, but complicated. "I miss who I thought she was. The version of her I fell for. But that person either never really existed, or she stopped being that person a long time before she left. That must have been hard. Realizing that. It was, but it also made it easier to let go." The play wrapped up with a finale that involved all the kids singing a song about friendship while wearing various animal and plant costumes. It was adorable and slightly off-key, and when it ended, the audience erupted into applause. Mia found them afterward, still wearing her tree costume, her face flushed with excitement. "Did you see me? Did you see?" "You were amazing," Olivia said, crouching down to Mia's level. "Best tree I've ever seen." "Really? Really? You have real stage presence." Mia beamed and threw her arms around Olivia's neck. Ethan watched Olivia's expression shift, surprise, then something softer, warmer, as she hugged his daughter back. When Mia pulled away to go find her friends, Olivia straightened, and Ethan caught the sheen in her eyes. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, that was really nice." "She likes you." "I like her too." Olivia glanced at him. "Is that weird, that I'm getting attached to your kid?" "No, it's..." He stopped, searching for the right words. "It's really not weird. It's actually kind of perfect." They left the school together, Mia chattering nonstop about the play and already planning what role she'd audition for next year. Olivia walked them to Ethan's truck, and when Mia climbed into the back seat, she turned to him. "Thank you for inviting me tonight." "Thank you for coming. It meant a lot to both of us." She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and Ethan forgot they were standing in a school parking lot surrounded by families. Forgot everything except the feeling of her lips on his, and the certainty that this, whatever this was, mattered. When they pulled apart, Mia was watching them through the truck window, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "Your daughter is spying on us," Olivia said, trying not to laugh. "Yeah, she does that. Does it bother you?" "No." Ethan smiled. "I think she approves." "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." The word settled over him like a promise, and Ethan held on to them the whole drive home. But promises, he'd learned, were easy to make and harder to keep. And the world had a way of testing them when you least expected it. The test came sooner than expected on a cold November morning when Ethan was replacing brake pads on a Ford Explorer and his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. "This is Ethan," he answered, wedging the phone between his shoulder and ear while his hand stayed busy. "Mr. Cole, this is Principal Hendricks from Riverside Elementary. I'm calling about Mia." His hands went still. "Is she okay? What happened?" "She's fine physically, but there was an incident on the playground. Another student said some unkind things about your family situation, and Mia responded by pushing her. No one was hurt, but we have a zero-tolerance policy for physical contact. I need you to come pick her up." Ethan closed his eyes. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. He found Dale, explained the situation, and drove to the school with his stomach in knots. Mia was sitting outside the principal's office when he arrived, her arms crossed and her expression mutinous. The other girl, Hannah Morrison, whose mother ran the PTA, sat across from her with red-rimmed eyes and a theatrical sniffling that Ethan immediately clocked as performance. "Mr. Cole," Principal Hendricks emerged from her office. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Mrs. Morrison is already here. Why don't we all step inside?" The meeting was exactly as uncomfortable as Ethan had anticipated. Hannah's mother, Patricia, had her sympathy face on. The one that said she felt very sorry for poor Mia, who didn't have a mother, but really, violence was never the answer. "I understand Mia's situation is difficult," Patricia was saying, dabbing at her eyes. But Hannah was simply stating facts. She told Mia that her mother didn't want her, and while that may be painful to hear, it's not untrue, is it? Ethan's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. "My daughter's family situation is none of Hannah's business, or yours." "Well, the children talk. They notice things, and when Mia started bringing that woman around, that woman has a name. It's Olivia." Patricia's expression shifted into something knowing and cruel. "Yes, Olivia Grant, the billionaire. People are talking, Mr. Cole, about why someone like her would be interested in someone like you. And the children hear those conversations. What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm simply saying that perhaps Mia is acting out because she's confused about what's happening in her home life. First, no mother, and now this new woman who's clearly, well, it's just unusual, isn't it?" Ethan stood up, done with this conversation. "My daughter pushed your daughter because your daughter was cruel to her. That's the beginning and end of it. Mia will be appropriately disciplined at home, but don't for 1 second pretend Hannah is innocent here." Principal Hendricks intervened before Patricia could respond. "Mr. Cole, I think it's best if Mia goes home for the rest of the day. We'll call this an isolated incident, but please talk to her about keeping her hands to herself." "I will." He looked at Mia. "Get your stuff, we're leaving." The drive home was silent. Mia stared out the window, her jaw set in a way that reminded Ethan painfully of himself. When they pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. "I'm not sorry." "Mia, she said you were only with Olivia because she's rich and feels bad for us. She said Olivia's going to leave as soon as she gets bored, just like Mom did, and everyone was laughing." Ethan's heart cracked. He turned in his seat to face her. "Mia, look at me." She did, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "What Hannah said was mean and wrong, but pushing her didn't fix anything. It just got you in trouble." "I know." Her voice was small. "But I was so mad, Daddy. I wanted to make her stop talking." "I get that. I really do. But you can't hit people just because they say things you don't like. Even when they're being awful? Even then. You use your words. You tell a teacher. You walk away." Mia's face crumpled. But what if what she said is true? What if Olivia does leave? Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt and pulled his daughter into his arms, holding her tight while she cried. "Baby, Olivia's not going anywhere. She cares about us. About you." "How do you know?" "Because I see the way she looks at you, the way she shows up when she says she will, the way she asks about your day and actually listens to the answer. Those aren't things people do when they're planning to leave." "But Mom left." "Your mom left because she wasn't ready to be a parent. That was about her, not you. It had nothing to do with how wonderful you are." Mia pulled back, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "Do you love Olivia?" The question caught him off guard. Yeah, I think I do." "Does she love you?" "I don't know. We haven't talked about it." "You should, because if you love each other, then Hannah's stupid and mean and wrong about everything." Despite the heaviness in his chest, Ethan smiled. Hannah is definitely mean, but we don't call people stupid, remember? Even when they are. Even when they are. He kept Mia home for the rest of the day, letting her watch TV while he called Dale to explain he wouldn't be back. Then he called Olivia because he needed to hear her voice and maybe because part of him was already preparing for the conversation he knew they needed to have. She answered on the second ring. Hey, is everything okay? You never call during work. Mia got in trouble at school. She pushed another kid. What? Why? Ethan explained, keeping his voice low so Mia wouldn't overhear. When he finished, Olivia was quiet for a long moment. People are talking about us, she finally said. It wasn't a question. Yeah. What are they saying? Does it matter? It might, if it's affecting Mia. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, that habit Olivia had noticed. They're saying what people always say when things don't fit their expectations. That it doesn't make sense. That you'll get bored and leave. That I don't know, using you somehow. That's ridiculous. Is it? The words came out harsher than he meant them. Because from the outside, we don't make sense. You're a billionaire. I'm a mechanic. You live in a mansion. I live in a house my grandmother left me. People look at us and they see a mismatch. And maybe they're not entirely wrong. Ethan, I'm not saying I believe it, but I'm saying I understand why other people do. And I'm worried about what that means for Mia. Olivia's voice was tight when she spoke. What are you saying? That we should stop seeing each other? No, I'm saying I don't know how to protect her from this. From people's judgment and assumptions and cruelty. You can't, not completely. People are going to talk regardless of what we do. But if we weren't together, they wouldn't have ammunition. The silence that followed was painful. When Olivia spoke again, her voice was careful, controlled. If you want to end this, just say so. Don't hide behind Mia. I'm not hiding behind her. I'm trying to do what's best for her. And you think what's best is cutting me out of your lives? Because some people at her school are gossiping? I think, He stopped, pressed his palm against his forehead. I don't know what I think. I just know that my daughter came home crying today because someone told her the person she's gotten attached to is going to leave. And I can't promise them that's not true. You think I'm going to leave? I think this is hard. I think the world is going to keep pushing back against us, and eventually it's going to get exhausting. And when it does, you think I'll walk away because it's easier than fighting for something real. Her voice cracked. You really think that little of me? That's not fair. No, what's not fair is you deciding I'm just like Mia's mother before giving me a chance to prove otherwise. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself, but the words stuck in his throat because maybe she was right. Maybe he was so used to being left that he was already bracing for it, already building walls to make the inevitable hurt less. I need to go, Olivia said quietly. I need to think. Olivia? But she had already hung up. Ethan stood there with the phone in his hand, feeling like he'd just destroyed something precious without meaning to. He'd wanted to protect Mia, protect himself, but all he'd done was push away the first person in years who'd made him believe that maybe he deserved more than just managing. That night, Mia asked where Olivia was. She's busy, Ethan said, which wasn't exactly a lie. Is she mad at me because of what happened at school? No, baby. She's not mad at you. Then why does your face look like that? Like what? Like when you're sad but trying to pretend you're not. Ethan sighed. His daughter was too perceptive for her own good. Olivia and I had a disagreement. It's complicated. Did you break up? I don't know. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then she climbed into his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. You should call her and say sorry. What if I wasn't the one who was wrong? Doesn't matter. You're sad. She's probably sad. And being sad by yourselves is dumb when you could just talk about it. Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought. Again. But calling Olivia felt impossible. What would he even say? That he was sorry for doubting her. Sorry for projecting his fears onto their relationship. Sorry for being so damaged by his past that he couldn't fully trust in their future. All of that was true, but it didn't change the fundamental problem, that people were talking, and it was hurting Mia, and he didn't know how to fix it. 2 days passed, then 3. Ethan went to work, picked Mia up from school, made dinner, went through the motions. But everything felt hollow, without Olivia's texts, her surprise visits, her presence in the spaces of his life that had felt empty for so long. On the fourth day, Jenny called him. "What did you do?" she demanded the second he answered. "Hello to you too." "Olivia called me crying, Ethan. Crying. She never cries. So what the hell did you do?" He closed his eyes. "I panicked." "About what?" "About everything. About people talking. About Mia getting hurt. About the fact that Olivia and I come from completely different worlds, and eventually that's going to matter." "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." "Thanks. Very helpful." "I'm serious. You found someone who makes you happy, who's great with Mia, who actually wants to be part of your life, and you're throwing it away because you're scared people are going to gossip? Newsflash, Ethan, people always gossip. That's what people do." "It's not just gossip. Mia got in a fight at school because some kid said Olivia was going to leave us. And you believed it." "What?" "You believed it," Jenny repeated. "Some bratty kid said something mean, and instead of trusting in what you and Olivia have built, you decided she was right. You decided Olivia would leave, so you started pushing her away first. Classic self-sabotage." Ethan wanted to argue, but the words rang too true. "I don't know how to do this, Jen. I don't know how to be with someone when the whole world is betting against us." "Then you figure it out, together. That's what relationships are. Two people deciding that whatever obstacles they face, they're going to face them as a team. But you can't do that if you keep running scared every time something gets hard." "What if I hurt her again?" "You will. That's part of being human. But if you love her, and I think you do, you show up anyway. You apologize, you do better, you keep choosing her even when it's scary." After Jenny hung up, Ethan sat with those words for a long time. She was right. He knew she was right. But knowing it and doing something about it were two different things. He was still wrestling with what to do when Olivia showed up at the garage the next afternoon. Ethan was under a car when Dale called out, "You got a visitor." He rolled out from under the vehicle, expecting a customer, and froze when he saw Olivia standing in the doorway. She looked tired. There were shadows under her eyes, and her usual composure seemed frayed, but she was there. "Can we talk?" she asked. Ethan nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. He led her to the break room, closed the door behind them, and waited. Olivia stood near the table, her arms crossed. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About us not making sense, about people talking, about whether I'm going to leave when things get hard." "Olivia, let me finish." She took a breath. "You're right that we come from different worlds, and you're right that people are going to judge us for it. But you're wrong if you think any of that matters to me more than what we have." "I know, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "I'm not finished." Her voice was firm. "I need you to understand something. I have spent my entire life trying to fit into boxes other people built for me. The perfect daughter, the successful CEO, the woman who has everything figured out, and it nearly destroyed me. The accident didn't just break my body, Ethan. It broke the illusion that any of that mattered." She moved closer, her eyes locked on his. "When I met you, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. You didn't care about my money or my status or my public image. You just saw me. And that terrified me, because being seen meant being vulnerable, and I'd spent so long protecting myself that I'd forgotten how to let anyone in. I'm sorry I made you feel like that vulnerability wasn't worth it," Ethan said quietly. "I'm not done," Olivia repeated, but her voice had softened. "I'm telling you this because I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Not because people are talking, not because this is hard, not because your daughter's classmates are cruel. I'm here because I want to be, because you and Mia make me happier than I've been in as long as I can remember. And if you can't trust that, if you're going to keep waiting for me to prove I'm just like everyone else who's left you, then we need to end this now." The ultimatum hung in the air between them. Ethan could feel the weight of it, the choice she was forcing him to make. Trust her or lose her. It was that simple and that complicated. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I'm scared that I'm not enough. That eventually you're going to realize you could have someone better. Someone who doesn't come with a kid and a mortgage and grease under his fingernails. Someone who fits into your world instead of pulling you down into mine." "You're not pulling me down. You're lifting me up." Olivia's voice broke slightly. "You make me want to be better, to feel more, to live instead of just existing. How can you not see that?" Because I've spent 4 years convinced that I don't deserve good things, that the best I can hope for is keeping my head above water and making sure Mia's okay. And what about what Mia wants? Have you asked her? She wants you in our lives. She's made that pretty clear. Then stop deciding for her that losing me would hurt less than fighting to keep me. Olivia stepped even closer, close enough that Ethan could see the gold flecks in her gray eyes. Stop deciding for both of us that this isn't worth it. Ethan reached for her then, pulling her into his arms and holding her like she might disappear if he let go. Olivia wrapped her arms around him, her face pressed against his shoulder, and for a long moment they just stood there. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I'm so sorry. You were right. I was being a coward. I was so busy protecting myself from getting hurt that I hurt you instead. I know you're scared. I am too. But we can't let fear win. What if people keep talking? What if it gets worse before it gets better? Then we deal with it. Together." She pulled back enough to look at him. "But you have to actually trust me, Ethan. You have to believe that I'm choosing this, choosing you, for real." He nodded, his throat tight. "I do. I'm going to try harder to believe it." "That's all I'm asking." They kissed then, desperate and relieved, and Ethan felt something in his chest unlock. This wasn't going to be easy. The world was still going to have opinions, people were still going to talk, and there would be more days when doubt crept in. But Olivia was right. They could face it together, and that made all the difference. When they finally pulled apart, Olivia smiled. "So we're okay?" "We're okay." "Good. Because I have something planned for this weekend, and I need you and Mia to be available." "What kind of something?" "It's a surprise. Just trust me." Ethan laughed. "I'm working on that, remember?" "Then start now." That Saturday, Olivia picked them up in her car and drove them an hour outside of town to a place Ethan had never been. A sprawling farm that offered horseback riding, hay rides, and a corn maze. Mia's eyes went wide when she realized where they were. "Are we really going to ride horses?" she asked, practically vibrating with excitement. "If you want to," Olivia said. Yes, I want to." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Mia rode a gentle mare named Daisy, squealing with delight every time the horse moved. Ethan and Olivia followed on their own horses, and while Ethan was decidedly mediocre at riding, Olivia was surprisingly good. "Did you take lessons?" he asked as they trotted along a wooded trail. "When I was younger, my parents thought it would be good for my posture and discipline." "Did it work?" "Clearly not, since I ended up rejecting everything they wanted me to be." Ethan grinned. "Rebel. Reform rebel. These days I just ride horses and date mechanics." After the horseback riding, they tackled the corn maze. Mia insisted on leading the way, which resulted in them getting thoroughly lost and having to backtrack twice. But nobody minded. The sun was warm, the air smelled like autumn, and for the first time in days, Ethan felt like he could breathe again. They stopped for cider and donuts at the farm's cafe, sitting at a picnic table while Mia chattered about wanting a horse of her own. "We don't have room for a horse, kiddo," Ethan said. "But we could make room. We could build a barn." "With what money?" "Olivia's rich. She could buy us a barn." Ethan nearly choked on his cider. "Mia," but Olivia was laughing. "I appreciate the confidence in my resources, but I think your dad's right. A horse is a big responsibility. What if I promise to take care of it?" "You can't even remember to make your bed most mornings." Mia pouted, but it didn't last long. She was too happy, too busy soaking in the day to stay disappointed. As the sun started to set, they made their way back to the car. Mia fell asleep almost immediately, and Ethan and Olivia drove in comfortable silence for a while. "Thank you for today," Ethan said eventually. "This was exactly what we needed." "I thought so too. Sometimes you just need to step away from everything and remember why you're fighting." "And why are we fighting?" Olivia glanced at him, her expression soft. "Because what we have is worth it." He reached over and took her hand, threading their fingers together. "Yeah, it really is." They drove back to town as the sky turned purple and stars began to emerge. Mia woke up as they pulled into Ethan's driveway, groggy and disoriented. "Are we home?" she mumbled. "Yeah, baby, we're home." Olivia walked them to the door, and when Mia hugged her goodnight, Ethan saw the way Olivia held on a little longer than necessary, the way her eyes closed like she was memorizing the moment. "I'll see you soon?" Olivia asked after Mia had gone inside. Definitely. She kissed him, slow and sweet, and Ethan felt the last of his doubts dissolve. This was real. This was right. And whatever came next, they'd face it together. The fragile peace they'd built lasted exactly 3 weeks before the world reminded them that reconciliation was only the beginning, not the end. It started with a phone call from Ethan's uncle, Rick, who lived 2 states over and only surfaced when he needed something or had opinions he felt compelled to share. Ethan was fixing dinner when his phone rang, and he made the mistake of answering without checking the caller ID. "Ethan, it's Rick." "Hey." Ethan wedged the phone between his shoulder and ear, stirring the pasta sauce with one hand. "What's up?" "I heard you're seeing someone, that Grant woman." Ethan's hand stilled on the spoon. "Where'd you hear that?" "Facebook. Your friend Jenny posted pictures from some party. You two looked pretty cozy." Of course she had. Jenny meant well, but her enthusiasm for their relationship sometimes manifested in ways that made Ethan's private life decidedly less private. "Yeah, we're together," Ethan said carefully. "She's that billionaire, right? The one who was in that accident?" "That's her." Rick was quiet for a moment, and Ethan could practically hear him calculating. "That's quite a catch." "She's not a fish, Rick." "You know what I mean. A woman like that could set you and Mia up for life. Make things a lot easier." Ethan's jaw clenched. "That's not why I'm with her." "I'm not saying it is, but you'd be stupid not to think about it. You've been struggling for years, and now you've got an opportunity to give Mia a better life. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not using Olivia for her money. I didn't say you were using her. I'm saying you should be smart about this. Make sure you're protected. Maybe talk to a lawyer about what happens if things get serious." "Rick, I'm not having this conversation. I'm just trying to help. You're my nephew, and I don't want to see you get taken advantage of." "By Olivia? You think she's going to take advantage of me?" "I think rich people don't stay with regular people unless there's something in it for them. Maybe she likes playing house with you and the kid, but what happens when she gets bored? You going to be left holding the bag?" Ethan turned off the stove, his appetite gone. "I have to go. Dinner's ready." "Just think about what I said." "Bye, Rick." "Rick?" He hung up before his uncle could say anything else, but the damage was done. The insinuation sat in his stomach like a rock. That Olivia was slumming, that this was temporary, that Ethan should be securing some kind of financial safety net before she inevitably left. It was exactly what he'd been afraid of. Not just that people would talk, but that they'd twist everything he and Olivia had into something transactional and ugly. "Daddy, is dinner ready?" Mia called from the living room. "Yeah, kiddo, come eat." He didn't tell Olivia about the call. Didn't want to burden her with his family's small-minded opinions, or admit that part of him, the damaged, defensive part, had heard Rick's words and wondered if there was truth in them. Not that Olivia was using him, but that maybe he should be thinking more practically about their future, about what would happen if things fell apart. But Olivia noticed something was off. She always did. "You're quiet tonight," she said 2 days later when they were sitting on his porch after Mia had gone to bed. The November air was cold enough that they were sharing a blanket, Olivia tucked against his side. "Just tired." "That's not it." She pulled back to look at him. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Work's been busy." "Ethan," he sighed. There was no point in lying to her. "My uncle called. He had some opinions about us." "What kind of opinions?" "The kind that suggest I should be thinking about protecting myself financially in case you decide to leave." Olivia's expression went carefully blank. "He thinks I'm going to leave. He thinks rich people don't stay with regular people. His words, not mine." "And what do you think?" "I think my uncle's an idiot who doesn't know you at all." "But?" Ethan hesitated. "But he's not the only one who's going to think that way. People are always going to look at us and see a mismatch. They're always going to assume there's an angle, something that doesn't add up." "Does that bother you?" "It bothers me that it affects you, that you have to deal with people questioning your motives because you're with me." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was measured. "I've dealt with people questioning my motives my entire life. When I made my first million, they said I was ruthless. When I made my first billion, they said I was cold. When I stepped back after the accident, they said I was weak. There's no version of me that exists where someone isn't judging my choices. That's different. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it's exactly the same. People make assumptions because they can't fathom that a woman might choose something for herself that doesn't fit their narrative. She shifted to face him more fully. I'm with you because you make me happy. Because you see me as a person, not a balance sheet. Because your daughter looks at me like I matter. Those are my reasons, and they're the only ones that count. I know that. I do. But I also know that people like my uncle are going to keep making comments, and eventually, it's going to wear on you. Then let it wear on me. That's my choice to make, not yours. Ethan pulled her closer, resting his chin on top of her head. I just don't want you to regret this. The only thing I'd regret is letting other people's opinions cost me something real. They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, and Ethan tried to believe that love was enough to override the noise. But doubt was a persistent thing, and it had a way of finding cracks to seep through. The next blow came from an unexpected direction. Ethan was picking Mia up from school on a Friday when one of the other parents, Tom Wheeler, whose son was in Mia's class, approached him in the parking lot. Hey, Ethan, got a minute? Sure. What's up? Tom glanced around like he was checking for eavesdroppers. I wanted to give you a heads up. There's been some talk among the parents about your girlfriend. Ethan's stomach sank. What kind of talk? Some people are concerned about her being around the kids. Not just Mia, but at school events. Patricia Morrison's been stirring things up, saying it's inappropriate for someone like Olivia to be involved in school functions when she's not a parent. She came to one play. One. I know, and I think it's ridiculous. But Patricia's got a following, and she's pushing the PTA to implement some kind of policy about non-family members attending school events. Ethan felt heat rising in his chest. So what, they're trying to ban Olivia from coming to things because she's not Mia's biological parent? That's what it sounds like. I'm voting against it for what it's worth. But I thought you should know what's coming. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the warning. But appreciation didn't make it hurt less. The idea that people were actively working to exclude Olivia, to make her feel unwelcome in a space where Mia wanted her, it was infuriating and heartbreaking in equal measure. When he told Olivia that night, her reaction was quieter than he expected. I won't go to school events anymore, she said. If it's causing problems for Mia, I'll stay away. That's not fair to you, or to Mia. She wants you there. And I want to be there, but not if it means making things harder for her. Olivia, you can't let people like Patricia Morrison dictate your life. I'm not. I'm choosing what battles to fight. And if stepping back from school stuff means Mia doesn't have to deal with more whispers and judgment, then that's what I'll do. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to insist that they should fight this, that Olivia had every right to be part of Mia's life in all the ways that mattered. But he could see the exhaustion in her face, the weight of constantly defending her presence in their lives, and he didn't have the heart to push. I hate this, he said quietly. So do I. But we knew it wasn't going to be easy. The distance that had been closing between them started to widen again, not because they wanted it to, but because the pressure kept mounting. Olivia pulled back from some of the casual drop-bys at the garage, conscious of people watching and judging. Ethan found himself second-guessing whether to invite her to things, not wanting to put her in positions where she'd be scrutinized. Mia noticed, of course. Why doesn't Olivia come over as much anymore? She asked one evening while they were doing dishes. She's been busy with work. Is she mad at us again? No, baby, she's not mad. Then why does everything feel weird? Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. Everything did feel weird, like they were all holding their breath, waiting for the next shoe to drop. It dropped 2 weeks later. Ethan was at the garage when his phone buzzed with a text from Jenny. It was a link to a local news website with a headline that made his blood run cold. Local billionaire's new romance raises eyebrows. The article was short but vicious. It detailed Olivia's relationship with Ethan, painting him as a struggling single father and her as a wealthy woman recovering from trauma. The implication was clear that Olivia was either being taken advantage of or she was using Ethan as some kind of project to make herself feel better. The piece quoted anonymous sources who questioned the relationship's authenticity and speculated about Olivia's mental state post-accident. Ethan read it twice, his hands shaking with anger. Then he called Olivia. "Did you see it?" he asked when she answered. Yeah, I saw it. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I don't know how they even found out about us, or why they think this is news. It's fine. It's not fine. They're making us sound like some kind of scandal. I've been in worse articles. This is nothing. But her voice was hollow, and Ethan knew she was lying. This wasn't nothing. This was their private life being dissected and judged by strangers, their relationship reduced to speculation and innuendo. What do we do? He asked. I don't know. Ignore it, probably. Responding would just give it more attention. And if people keep talking? Then they keep talking. She paused. Ethan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Are you having second thoughts about us? About whether this is worth it? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. What? No, of course not. Because you've been pulling away, not inviting me to things, keeping conversations surface level. And I get it. The scrutiny is intense, and it's affecting Mia, and maybe you're realizing that being with me comes with too much baggage. That's not it at all. I've been trying to protect you from all this, from having to constantly defend yourself and deal with people's judgment. I don't need you to protect me. I need you to be honest with me. I am being honest. I love you. The words were out before he could stop them, hanging in the air between them like a confession. Olivia was silent for so long that Ethan thought she might have hung up. Then she said very quietly, Say that again. I love you. I have for a while now. I just didn't know how to tell you. Why not? Because I was scared. Because saying it makes it real. And if it's real, then losing you would destroy me. You're not going to lose me. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I love you too. Ethan's eyes burned. Yeah? Yeah. I've loved you since the night you asked me to dance and treated me like a person instead of a headline. I've loved you through every moment of doubt and every difficult conversation. And I'm going to keep loving you, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Olivia, but I need you to stop trying to make decisions for me. If I want to step back from something, that's my choice. If I want to fight, that's also my choice. You don't get to protect me from my own life. I'm sorry, you're right. I've been treating you like you're fragile when you're the strongest person I know. I'm not that strong. I'm terrified most of the time. But I'm tired of letting fear run my life. And I'm tired of letting other people's opinions matter more than what we have. So what do? We stop hiding. We stop apologizing for being together. We show up for each other publicly, and we let people think whatever they want. It sounded simple when she said it like that. Brave, even. But Ethan knew it meant walking directly into the fire instead of trying to avoid it. What about Mia? He asked. What about her? If we're more public about this, the scrutiny is going to get worse. She's already dealing with kids at school saying things. Then we talk to her. We prepare her. We make sure she knows that none of this changes how much we love her or how important she is. But we don't let fear of what might happen keep us from building something real. Ethan closed his eyes, letting her words sink in. She was right. Of course she was right. They couldn't keep living in this limbo, half-committed and constantly looking over their shoulders. Either they were in this together, fully and completely, or they weren't in it at all. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Yeah? Yeah. Let's stop hiding. That weekend, they took Mia to the town's fall festival, a big public event with carnival rides, food vendors, and half the town in attendance. Ethan held Olivia's hand as they walked through the crowd, and when people stared, he didn't let go. When Patricia Morrison made a show of whispering to her friends, Olivia just smiled and waved. Mia was oblivious to the attention, too busy begging for cotton candy and dragging them toward the Ferris wheel. They rode it together, the three of them squeezed into one car, and when they reached the top, Ethan looked out at the town spread below them and felt something shift. This was his life. This town, this kid, this woman beside him, and he wasn't going to let anyone make him feel ashamed of it. Daddy, look! Mia pointed at something in the distance. You can see our house from here. I see it, baby. And Olivia's house, too. It's so big. Olivia laughed. It is pretty big, isn't it? When we get married, are we all going to live there or in our house? Ethan nearly swallowed his tongue. Mia. What? You love each other, right? That's what people do when they love each other. They get married. Olivia's eyes met Ethan's over Mia's head, and there was something warm and terrified and hopeful in her expression. "That's usually how it works," she said carefully. "So are you going to get married or not?" "We haven't really talked about that yet," Ethan managed. "Well, you should, because I want Olivia to be my mom." The words landed like a bomb. Ethan looked at his daughter, then at Olivia, and saw tears streaming down her face. "Mia," Olivia said, her voice shaking, "that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." "Does that mean yes?" "It means—" Olivia looked at Ethan helplessly. "It means we need to have some grown-up conversations," Ethan said, his own throat tight. "But the fact that you want that means everything to us, to both of us." Mia seemed satisfied with that answer, turning her attention back to the view. But Ethan and Olivia sat in charged silence for the rest of the ride, both of them processing what had just happened. When they got off the Ferris wheel, Mia ran ahead to look at the game booths, leaving Ethan and Olivia standing in the middle of the festival crowd. "Did that just happen?" Olivia asked. "Yeah, it did. She wants me to be her mom. Apparently." Olivia pressed her hand to her mouth, fresh tears spilling over. "I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I'd be any good at it." "You're already good at it. You've been showing up for her since day one." "Showing up isn't the same as being a parent. What if I screw it up? What if I'm not what she needs?" Ethan took her hands, grounding her. "Then you'd be like every other parent in the world. None of us know what we're doing. We're all just trying our best and hoping we don't mess up our kids too badly." "That's not very reassuring." "No, but it's honest." He smiled slightly. "You don't have to have all the answers, Olivia. You just have to love her, and you already do that." She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "This is really happening, isn't it? We're really doing this." "Looks like it." "I'm terrified." "Me too, but I'm also happier than I've been in my entire life." Olivia kissed him then, right there in the middle of the festival with half the town watching. And when she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. "Okay, let's do this. Let's build a life together." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They found Mia at a ring toss booth, and Ethan won her a stuffed elephant on his third try. She clutched it to her chest, grinning, and when Olivia reached for her hand, Mia took it without hesitation. They walked through the festival like that, a family, imperfect and unconventional, but real. And when people stared, Ethan met their eyes and refused to look away. This was his choice. This was his future. And he wasn't going to apologize for it anymore. But even as he felt that certainty settle in his bones, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that the hardest test was still to come. Because loving someone was one thing. Building a life with them, navigating the logistics, the compromises, the 1,000 tiny decisions that made up a shared future, that was something else entirely. And Ethan had no idea if they were ready for it. The certainty Ethan felt at the festival lasted exactly until the following Tuesday, when reality came knocking in the form of a certified letter from a law firm in New York. He stared at the envelope during his lunch break, his sandwich forgotten on the table in front of him. The return address was embossed, expensive looking, the kind of thing that screamed money and power. For a wild moment, he considered not opening it at all, just tossing it in the trash and pretending it had never arrived. But that was the old Ethan talking, the one who ran from difficult things instead of facing them. He tore open the envelope. The letter inside was brief and professionally cold. Olivia's investors were concerned about her recent behavior, her prolonged absence from the office, her reduced involvement in company decisions, her relationship with someone they deemed unsuitable for a woman of her stature. They were requesting a formal meeting to discuss her future with the company and whether she was still fit to make executive decisions. Ethan read it 3 times, each pass making his stomach sink further. They were going after her, using him as ammunition to question her judgment, her competence, her right to live her own life. He called her immediately. "I was wondering when you'd get that," Olivia said, when he told her about the letter. Her voice was tired, resigned. "You knew about this?" "They sent me one too, last week." "And you didn't tell me?" "Because I knew you'd blame yourself. And this isn't your fault, Ethan. This is them trying to control me the same way they always have." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. I have the meeting scheduled for next Monday. They want me to fly to New York, sit in a conference room, and explain myself like I'm a child who's been misbehaving. So don't go. Tell them to go to hell. Olivia laughed, but it was a hollow sound. I wish it were that simple, but they control a significant portion of my company's voting shares. If they decide I'm unfit, they can force me out. Can they actually do that? Legally, it's complicated, but they can make my life miserable enough that staying becomes impossible. Ethan felt anger rising in his chest, hot and helpless. This is because of me, because you're with me. This is because they're afraid of losing control. I've been pulling away from the company since the accident, and that scares them. You're just a convenient excuse. I'm not just an excuse. I'm the reason they think you've lost your mind. Ethan. No, it's true. They look at us and see someone who's clearly gone off the deep end. Billionaire dates small-town mechanic? Must be brain damage from the accident. Stop it, you're not the problem here. Then what is? Because from where I'm sitting, your entire career is being threatened because you made the mistake of falling in love with someone beneath your tax bracket. The words came out harsher than he meant them, and the silence that followed was painful. Is that really what you think? Olivia asked finally. That loving you is a mistake? I think... He stopped, pressed his palm against his forehead. I think you've given up a lot to be with me, and now you might lose even more, and I don't know how to be okay with that. I haven't given up anything I wanted to keep. The company, the investors, the endless meetings about quarterly projections. I was drowning in all of it before the accident. Being with you didn't make me walk away from that life. It just gave me something worth walking toward. But if you lose the company, then I lose the company, and I'll figure out what comes next. Ethan wanted to believe her, wanted to accept that she could walk away from everything she'd built and be fine. But he'd seen what happened when people gave up their identities for relationships. His own mother had done it, marrying his father and disappearing into his world until there was nothing left of who she'd been. He couldn't let that happen to Olivia. Go to the meeting, he said. What? Go to New York, hear them out. Figure out if there's a way to keep your company without compromising who you are. And if there isn't, then you make a choice. But at least you'll know what your options are. Olivia was quiet for a long moment. You want me to go? I want you to not regret this, any of this. I could never regret you. You say that now. But what about in 5 years when you're looking back at everything you gave up? What about when you realize you could have had both if you'd just chosen differently? There is no both, Ethan. There's either the life they want me to have or the life I'm choosing for myself. And I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. He wanted to argue, wanted to push back, but the exhaustion in her voice stopped him. They were both tired of fighting, against the world, against each other, against their own fears. Okay, he said quietly, but still go to the meeting, just to know where you stand. Will you come with me? The question caught him off guard. To New York? Yeah, I know it's a lot to ask, especially with Mia and work, but I don't want to do this alone. Ethan thought about it, about leaving Mia with Jenny for a few days, about taking time off from the garage, about walking into a world that would make him feel small and out of place. Every practical part of him screamed that it was a bad idea. But Olivia needed him. And wasn't that what love was supposed to be? Showing up even when it was hard? Yeah, he said. I'll come. They flew out on Sunday. Ethan had never been on a plane before, and the entire experience, from security to takeoff to the cramped coach seats, left him feeling disoriented and out of his depth. But Olivia held his hand through the turbulence, and when they landed at JFK, she navigated the chaos of the airport like it was second nature. New York was overwhelming. The noise, the crowds, the sheer density of people and buildings and movement. It was everything Ethan's quiet Ohio town wasn't. Olivia had booked them a hotel in Manhattan, and when they checked in, Ethan tried not to think about how much the room probably cost per night. You okay? Olivia asked as they unpacked. Yeah, just taking it all in. It's a lot, I know. I forgot how intense this city is until I left it. You lived here? For 10 years. Had a penthouse in Tribeca, worked 80-hour weeks, convinced myself I was happy. She sat on the edge of the bed. I don't miss it. Not even a little? Sometimes I miss the energy, the feeling that anything's possible, but that feeling always came with a price. Ethan sat beside her. What if they offer you a way back in? Full control, no strings attached. That's not going to happen. They want me compliant, not in charge. But if it did? Olivia looked at him, her gray eyes searching his face. Why are you asking me this? Because I need to know that you're not going to wake up one day and resent me for taking you away from all this. You didn't take me away from anything. I chose to leave. Because of the accident. Because the accident made me realize I was living the wrong life. She took his hand. Ethan, you're not some consolation prize I settled for because my first choice didn't work out. You're what I actually want. Why is that so hard for you to believe? Because people like you don't end up with people like me. Not in real life. What does that even mean, people like you? You're kind, hardworking, a great father. You make me laugh. You see me as a person instead of a portfolio. Those aren't small things. They're not enough to build a life on. Yes, they are. They're exactly enough. She cupped his face in her hands. I love you, not your potential, not what you could be if you were different. You, as you are right now, and I need you to start believing that. Ethan closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. He wanted to believe it, wanted to accept that maybe love didn't have to make sense to everyone else as long as it made sense to them. I'm trying, he whispered. I know, that's all I'm asking. The meeting the next morning was exactly as terrible as Ethan had anticipated. They took a car to a sleek office building in Midtown, and Olivia led him through a marble lobby to an elevator that required a key card to access the upper floors. The conference room they were directed to had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and sitting around a massive table were 5 people in suits that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. Olivia introduced him, and the polite smiles they gave him didn't reach their eyes. He was being assessed, cataloged, found wanting. He could see it in the way they glanced at his off-the-rack blazer, the only one he owned that he'd bought for his grandmother's funeral. Mr. Cole, thank you for joining us, said a man Olivia had identified as Robert Chen, the lead investor. Though I should mention this is typically a private meeting. Ethan's here because I asked him to be, Olivia said smoothly. If we're going to discuss my personal life, he should be present. Robert's smile tightened. Of course. Well, let's get started. What followed was an hour of thinly veiled accusations wrapped in corporate language. They questioned Olivia's judgment, her priorities, her fitness to lead. They brought up her extended leave, her reduced involvement in daily operations, her relationship with Ethan, which they carefully framed as a concern about her emotional state post-trauma. Ethan sat there feeling his anger build with every condescending word. These people didn't care about Olivia. They cared about control, about maintaining their influence over a company they'd helped fund, but that Olivia had built. With all due respect, one of the investors, a woman named Margaret, said, not sounding respectful at all, "We're worried you're making decisions based on emotion rather than logic. The accident was traumatic, and it's natural to seek comfort. But involving yourself with someone so far outside your usual sphere raises questions about your state of mind." Ethan felt Olivia's hand tighten on his knee under the table, a warning to stay quiet. But he'd had enough. "I have a question," he said. The room went silent. Robert raised an eyebrow. "Yes, Mr. Cole?" If Olivia had started dating another CEO or a doctor or a lawyer, someone with the right pedigree, would we be having this meeting? That's not... Because it seems to me that the problem isn't her judgment. It's that she chose someone you don't approve of. And you're using that as an excuse to question her competence. Margaret's expression hardened. "Mr. Cole, you may not understand the complexities of..." "I understand just fine. You're trying to bully her into living the life you think she should have instead of the one she wants. And you're doing it by making her feel like she's crazy for wanting something different." "Ethan," Olivia said quietly, but he was on a roll now. "She built this company. She made you all rich. And the second she decided to prioritize her own happiness over your bottom line, you turned on her. That's not concern. That's control." Robert stood up, his face flushed. "I think it's clear that this meeting isn't productive. Olivia, we'll be in touch with our formal recommendations." "Don't bother," Olivia said, standing as well. "I'm stepping down as CEO, effective immediately." The room erupted into overlapping voices, protests, questions, threats about stock prices and shareholder lawsuits. But Olivia cut through it all with a calm that Ethan recognized as her armor. I'll retain my shares and my seat on the board, as is my right, but I'm done pretending I want to run a company that's become more about ego than innovation. Promote my COO to CEO. She's been doing most of the work anyway. Olivia, don't be rash. I'm not being rash, I'm being clear. This company will be fine without me. Better, probably. And I'll be fine without it. She turned and walked out, and Ethan followed, his heart pounding. They didn't speak until they were back in the elevator, and then Olivia leaned against the wall and started laughing. Did that really just happen? She asked. Yeah, it did. I just quit my own company. You did. I feel... She stopped, searching for the word. Free. Terrified, but free. Ethan pulled her into his arms. Are you sure about this? You can still go back. Tell them you were angry. I don't want to go back. I meant what I said in there. I'm done living for them. She pulled back to look at him. That speech you gave was insane, by the way. I know. I'm sorry if I overstepped. Are you kidding? It was the hottest thing I've ever seen. He laughed, relief flooding through him. Yeah? Yeah, nobody's ever stood up for me like that. Well, someone should have. You deserve better than people who only value you when you're useful to them. Olivia kissed him then, deep and desperate, and when they finally broke apart, she was smiling. Let's go home, she said. To the hotel? To Ohio. I don't want to spend another minute in this city. They changed their flights and were back in Ohio by that evening. Jenny had kept Mia overnight, and when Ethan picked her up, his daughter launched herself into his arms. Did you bring me anything? She asked. I brought myself back. Does that count? No. He laughed. Well, Olivia might have gotten you something. Olivia produced a small bag from FAO Schwartz, and Mia squealed when she saw the stuffed animal inside, a plush lion with a mane that was already shedding. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mia hugged Olivia fiercely, and Ethan watched the way Olivia melted into it, her eyes closing. You're welcome, sweetheart. On the drive home, Mia chattered about everything she'd done with Jenny, barely pausing for breath. But when they pulled into the driveway, she went quiet. Daddy? Yeah, kiddo? Is Olivia going to live with us now? Ethan glanced at Olivia, who looked just as surprised by the question as he was. We haven't really talked about that. But you love each other, and she doesn't have a job anymore, so she could just stay here, right? It's more complicated than that, Mia. Why? We have a guest room. She could sleep there. Or in your room. I don't care. Olivia was trying not to laugh. That's very generous of you. So you'll do it? Mia, Ethan said gently. Olivia has her own house, a really big, really nice house. She might not want to give that up to live in our small one. I would, Olivia said quietly. Both Ethan and Mia turned to stare at her. You would? Ethan asked. Yeah, I mean, not tomorrow. There are logistics to figure out. But eventually, yeah. I'd rather be here with you two than alone in that big empty house. Mia's face lit up. Really? Really? This is the best day ever. She scrambled out of the truck and ran inside, probably to start planning where Olivia's things would go. Ethan sat in the driveway trying to process what had just happened. You're serious, he said. Very. Unless you don't want me to... I want you to. Are you sure? That house is your home. That house is a structure I bought because it was supposed to impress people. This... She gestured at his modest two-bedroom with its crooked shutters and overgrown lawn. This feels like home. Ethan kissed her, soft and slow, and when they pulled apart, he was grinning. Mia's going to have you moved in by the end of the week. I'm counting on it. They went inside to find Mia already rearranging her room to make space for when we become a real family. Olivia looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes, and he knew she was thinking the same thing he was, that they were already a real family. They had been for a while now. The next few weeks were a blur of change. Olivia officially stepped down as CEO, and the business press had a field day speculating about her reasons. Some articles painted her as a cautionary tale about letting personal trauma derail a promising career. Others suggested she was having a breakdown. A few, kinder pieces wondered if maybe she'd simply chosen happiness over success, and whether that was actually the braver choice. Ethan stopped reading them after a while. It didn't matter what strangers thought. Olivia started spending more nights at his place than her own. She didn't move in officially, not yet, but her toothbrush appeared in the bathroom. Her coffee mug claimed a spot in the cabinet. Her laughter filled the spaces that had been too quiet for too long. She started volunteering at Mia's school, helping with the art program since the PTA's attempt to ban her from events had quietly died when half the parents threatened to quit in protest. Turned out Patricia Morrison's influence wasn't as absolute as she'd thought, and slowly, carefully, Ethan started believing that this could actually work. That love didn't have to make sense to anyone but the people in it. That different worlds could collide and create something new instead of destroying each other. It wasn't perfect. They still fought sometimes. About Olivia trying to pay for things Ethan insisted on covering himself. About Ethan's tendency to shoulder problems alone instead of asking for help. About whose turn it was to do dishes. Normal things. Human things. But they also laughed more than Ethan had in years. They built pillow forts with Mia on rainy Saturdays. They took long drives to nowhere in particular. They fell asleep on the couch watching movies, tangled together like they'd been doing it forever. In early December, the town held its annual winter festival. It was smaller than the fall one, but no less beloved. Ice skating on the pond, hot chocolate vendors, a tree lighting ceremony in the town square. Ethan had never been one for public displays, but when Olivia suggested they go, he didn't hesitate. They bundled Mia into her winter coat and walked to the square, joining the crowd gathered around the enormous spruce that had been decorated with lights. The mayor gave a short speech about community and gratitude, and then the countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Mia counted along, bouncing on her toes. 7, 6, 5. Olivia's hand found Ethan's. 4, 3, 2. 1. The tree burst into light, and the crowd erupted in cheers, but Ethan wasn't looking at the tree. He was looking at Olivia, at the way the lights reflected in her eyes, at the smile on her face that was unguarded and real. "Dance with me," he said. She blinked. "What?" "Like at the wedding. Dance with me." There was no music, just the ambient noise of the crowd and the laughter of children. But Olivia stepped into his arms anyway, and they swayed together in the middle of the square while people milled around them. "You know everyone's watching, right?" Olivia murmured. "Yeah, I don't care." "When did you stop caring?" "When I realized that hiding wasn't protecting either of us. It was just making us smaller." Olivia rested her forehead against his. "I love you. I love you too." "Daddy, Olivia, look!" Mia appeared beside them, holding a paper snowflake she'd made at one of the craft booths. "I made this for our tree." "It's beautiful, baby," Ethan said. "Can we put it up tonight?" "Absolutely." Mia ran off again, and Olivia laughed. "Our tree." "I like the sound of that." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They stayed at the festival until Mia's energy finally crashed, and she started yawning. On the walk home, she insisted on holding both their hands, swinging between them like she used to do when she was smaller. "This was the best night," she announced. "I'm glad you had fun," Olivia said. "I always have fun when we're all together. We should be together all the time." "We're working on it," Ethan said, glancing at Olivia over Mia's head. When they got home, Mia went straight to bed, exhausted from the excitement. Ethan and Olivia sat on the couch, the only light coming from the small tree they'd put up in the corner of the living room. "I've been thinking," Olivia said after a while. About what Mia said. Being together all the time." Ethan's heart started beating faster. And I think she's right. I don't want to keep going back and forth between houses. I don't want to keep living in limbo." "What are you saying?" Olivia turned to face him fully. "I'm saying I want to sell my house and move in here. For real. If you'll have me." "Are you sure? This place is tiny compared to what you're used to." "I don't care about space. I care about you and Mia and building a life that actually feels like mine." Ethan pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "Yes, of course, yes. Of course." They sat like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet house, and Ethan thought about how far they'd come. From that first dance at the wedding when he'd been so afraid of feeling anything, to this moment where he couldn't imagine his life without her in it. It hadn't been easy, There had been doubt and fear and outside pressure that had threatened to tear them apart. But they'd fought for this, not against the world, but for each other. And that made all the difference. 3 months later, Olivia's house sold to a tech executive who wanted a weekend retreat. She moved into Ethan's place with surprisingly few possessions. Most of her furniture went to charity, and she kept only the things that mattered. Photos, books, the piano from her living room that barely fit in Ethan's but that Mia had begged her to bring. They were a family now, not because of marriage or legal documents, but because they'd chosen each other every day. Through the hard conversations and the moments of doubt, through the judgment of strangers and the opinions of people who thought they knew better. On a warm evening in late spring, Ethan found himself back at the Mitchells' house. They were throwing another party, and this time Ethan didn't hover at the edges. He stood with Olivia's hand in his, Mia running around with the other kids, and he felt settled in a way he'd never experienced before. "You two look happy," Jenny said, appearing beside them with a knowing smile. "We are," Olivia said simply. "Good. It's about damn time." Later, when the music started and couples drifted toward the makeshift dance floor, Olivia turned to Ethan with a question in her eyes. "Want to dance?" she asked. Ethan smiled, remembering the first time she'd asked him that. How terrified he'd been. How certain he was that one dance would be all they'd ever have. "Always," he said. They moved together under the string lights, surrounded by people who'd stopped seeing them as a scandal and started seeing them as just another couple in love. And as they swayed to the music, Ethan thought about everything they'd been through to get here. The fear, the doubt, the pressure from a world that wanted them to fit into boxes that didn't accommodate who they actually were. But they'd refused. They'd chosen the messier, harder path of being themselves and loving each other anyway. And in doing that, they'd built something real, not perfect, never perfect, but real. And that was enough. Mia appeared beside them, tugging on Ethan's sleeve. "Can I dance too?" Olivia scooped her up without hesitation, and the three of them danced together. A mechanic, a former billionaire CEO, and a 7-year-old girl who'd asked the universe for a family and gotten one that looked nothing like she'd expected, but everything she'd needed. As the song ended and another began, Ethan looked at the two people he loved most in the world and felt something he'd spent years convinced he didn't deserve. Hope, joy, home. And he knew, without question, that every difficult moment had been worth it to end up right here.